What name should you give to your business? Coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Thanks for coming back to the channel once again. Video number 3 already of 2025, and keeping in line with Fresh Start January. I asked you guys in the last week's video, in the step-by-step guide, if you would like to see like an in-depth video of one of the steps. And Katarina actually wrote me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for the message. She said she's currently setting up and she's really struggling to find a business name. So she would like to hear more about naming your business, trading name, etc. So while doing research for this specific video, I found out that it depends a lot from where you're watching from, right? It's actually in every country there are different rules. For example, I found out that in Spain, where Katarina is writing from, it's actually mandatory that you have to register your business, your freelance business with your legal name, with your actual name. But then I told her, of course, you can then still promote a brand, but on the invoices, you have to use your name. Well, here in Belgium, when you register for a sole proprietorship, you have to register your legal name. But you can also register a trade name, so they distinguish between legal and trade name, and that's where you can be creative, right? You have to register your legal name, but then you can register any trade name that you find interesting. Now, the choice you have to make when you name your business is, do you want to go for your legal name, a trade name, or a combination of both? So let's look at the pros and cons of these options. What I mean by a combination of both is, for example, if you take my legal name, Adrian Probst, and then you add translations to it, right? That's a very common practice that people do. Or just the last name and then translations, or die Besetzungen, or whatever the term is in your language. That's basically a combination approach. It has your name, but it's still a business name. Me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this option because it's kind of it's a two-way street. It's not really a brand because you're still trading with your own name, so the brand is still your own name. So I don't really see why you would add translation at the end of the name, because it just puts you in a box immediately, because that's what you do, right? And then if you want to offer someone maybe a slightly different service, they might think, why do you think you're qualified to do translations? So I don't know. Of course, people do it all the time. And if you already know that you want to stick with translation for years and years to come, that's a perfectly fine way to go. Me personally, I would not do it. I would go either for your legal name or for a creative language-related, industry-related name. We will get back on how to find that name later on. Your trade name has an immediate effect on the person you are trading with, on your clients, right? So imagine if you work for a company that is called something like Global Trans, or someone that is called Adrian Probst, you would imagine that the Global Trans company is a huge conglomerate that does translations, whereas I'm just me as a person, right? Now, that doesn't have to be. I could call myself Global Trans, right? And I tell you why I don't advise that in a second. But that perception that the name has on the client is what you want to think about when you think of your name as well. Do you want to, in the future, outsource? Do you want to become basically an agency or whatever business system that you have in mind, working with many different people? Then fair enough, go for a larger sounding name, right? Because that's what you want to represent. If you want to represent very small one-man, one-woman agency or company, then you better go small with your name, or with a very cute little niche name, that kind of has this perception for the client that it's a small company. Maybe you want to address clients that have been burned by agencies before. Happens all the time, by the way. I hear that all the time from my clients as well. And then they actively look for someone that is only 1 or 2 persons operation, so they can trust them fully, right? So in that case, that's what I want to do. That's why I trade with my legal name. It makes sense to do that. If you have a legal name, a government name that's quite hard to read or pronounce by the target audience you're looking for, so let's say you have an Asian name, Middle Eastern name, or Arabic name, for example, and it's not really easy to transfer it into a Latin alphabet, for example, I would advise not to trade with your legal name, because especially if your target is, let's say, if you work with English, if you work with French or whatever, and your native language, then it makes sense to go more international, so that you can stick in your client's brain, right? If you trade with your, let's say, with your Chinese name that your client can't really read unless they know Chinese, you will probably not stick in their mind well enough. So in that sense, it depends all on your, like if I was staying here in Belgium but working with Chinese clients, I might want to have a Chinese business name, right? It also works the other way around. If you go for a creative name, it's really important to do your market research. If you want to mainly target clients in Spain and you create some kind of pun, some kind of creative creation of a word, and then suddenly you realize that in Spanish actually that means something offensive or something, that not business appropriate, you don't want to go with that. Many companies, many brands have gone through the same thing and have not done their localization homework effectively. I forgot which car brand it was, but I remember a car model of a car brand was named something that was really offensive in Spanish, so they had to pull the whole model back. So definitely, once you have something in mind, definitely do your research in your target and your source languages, countries. Does it have a meaning? Is it okay to use? Does it already exist? That's another huge thing. Here in Belgium, you cannot register the same name twice. But even if it exists in the country that you're working for, you could technically do it here, but you don't want to, because you don't want to have this, maybe double meaning with a company that exists already in that country. So market research your name, definitely. It sounds silly, but definitely do that. To give you kind of an idea of a perception, I have prepared 4 possible names that I could work as a freelance translator. So I have Adrian Probst, the one I'm working as, Adrian Probst Translations. I have Global Trans, what I just mentioned before, and I have the Language Factory. So I want you to imagine these names. I'm going to put them here on screen and think what you would imagine working, like you are the client. What is your perception of someone coming to you with this name, right? So if I approach you as Adrian Probst, my email address is at adrianprobst.com. What do you imagine? Most likely you imagine that I'm a freelancer, that I do this on my own mostly. Of course, I have colleagues that support me with proofreadings, etc. But I am the one that provides the language services, right? And in my signature, in my email signature, it says nothing about translation. That is on purpose, because I offer much more than that. I hope that's what you would perceive, because that's exactly what I'm going for. With Adrian Probst Translations, you basically have the exact same thing, with the difference that you immediately give away that you are a translator. If that's your main thing, that's perfectly fine. But that's what you would perceive, right? A single proprietorship that does translation. Let's go over to Global Trans, completely different, right? If I write you with info@globaltrans.com, I don't know if that exists, by the way, don't email there, probably it exists. It's either a translation or like a transporting firm. Immediately different vibes, right? You might even, it's another thing to consider, you might even get filtered into a spam folder with something like this, right? Because it's a very generic email address with info in the front. So be careful with that. If you have a name that is very global, very big, maybe don't go with info, but rather go with adrian@globaltrans.com. That's already better, because it's a bit more personal and you will not land in the spam folders. But yeah, the perception of the client is, oh wow, this is a huge language service provider that wants to work with me, right? So I don't know, there may be in many different countries. I don't know how to talk to them. This is probably just one person, and then next time I talk to someone else. That would be my perception, and that's not what I want to go for as a freelancer. And the last but not least, the Language Factory, which I really like. I don't know, it just spontaneously came up. I don't know if it exists. I haven't done my market research, because this is just an example. No copyright infringement, sorry about that. But if I got an email, adrian@languagefactory or thelanguagefactory.com, that would be intriguing. It would feel like, oh, that's probably like a small service provider, maybe an agency that does language work, language services. That's really cool. So I would go, basically, to give you a summary of this exercise, I would go for the 2 extremes. The first one, or the last one that I mentioned, a strong brand name or your personal legal name. Now, how do you find a good brand name? That can be tough. If you have something immediately creative that comes to mind, or you feel like you are already associating with something, then definitely go down that route. If you don't have anything at all, I have a quick exercise ready for you. I want you to think, let's say 10 to 15 keywords. I want you to think about them. They should be related to your business. So let's say you are a language service professional that does medical translations, medical language services in the radiology department, clinical studies, etc., right? So you would write down, first of all, your specializations. You would say, write down medical, radiology, clinical, hospital, patient, maybe healthcare, health, etc. And then you would also write your what you're actually doing, your service. So you would write languages, linguistics, translation, translator, subtitler, maybe whatever. Write all these terms down, and then you can either use generative AI because we have it available, right? So you can put all these keywords into a free Gen AI provider and say, give me 20 creative brand names for a freelance translation business. Or you can try to be creative yourself. I did just when I created this script for this video, I tried to be a bit creative and I just put a few of these words together. So when you have the 10, 15 words, you can put them together, mix and match, half them, try to until something sticks. The ones that immediately came up was Meditrans, which would be medical translation. That sounds very big, right? Medilingua as well, sounds very nice and big. You could go for something like Radiolang or Radiolink for linguistics. The clinical linguist, I really like it. It's kind of like what I had before, the language factory, right? The clinical linguist, it creates a nice image because it creates an image that you're very precise, you're clinical with your language, but you're also a linguist, so you're very trained in it, and you are part of the clinical, hospital healthcare. What you definitely want to do is keep it simple, keep it straightforward, keep it globally recognized, so don't go too niche. What I did first, when I first started, I had a brand name and I went way too niche. I wanted to be clever and I merged some words and it didn't make any sense. And some clients actually asked me, what is this name about? So I didn't have the effect at all that I wanted. And I ditched it very early on. Now I just trade under my legal name, and my YouTube, my social media, my marketing efforts are all under Freelanceverse. Exactly the same exercise I did there. I wanted to create a universe for freelancers, so I made the Freelanceverse, and I really like the sound of it. It sticks in people's minds. I create a whole corporate identity around it with the dark blue space kind of stars and stuff. So that has worked well for me. And was definitely a decision that I made 5 years ago now, and that I still stand behind. Oftentimes these brand names become kind of old after 5-10 years. You feel like I'm not really identifying with that anymore, right? That's why I prefer to trade under my legal name, because I can't change that. I will still feel the same about my name in 5 years, but about the brand name that you create now, you might feel silly about 10 years ago. And then, so that's why my advice is always to go with your legal name. But I hope that helps you, Katerina. Thanks for reaching out. Let me know what your choice is in the end. I know which ones you are thinking about. They're all really cool. And don't let it stop you. If you feel hindered by it, just register your legal name and build your brand outside of the registration. That's also perfectly fine. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Monday with the next one. Bye-bye.